Today, we just want to get up, and this text, my God shall supply all of your needs according to his riches and glory. I want you to know, we as a family, we've put God to the test in this. And we
have been tested in that.
Have been tested in that. Quite a few years back, we decided that either God is a provider or he's a liar. But he can't be both. He's either a provider, because he said he would be, or he's going to be a liar. And we decided to test him in that. And it's the only thing God says test me in is funds, right? It's the only thing that God says test me in. And so today, the stories that we're going to tell, we're bragging on Christ. And it says in the scripture, if you're going to glory in something, glory that you know him. And today I can say we know him. And he's good and he's faithful. And so these stories that we tell, they're not about us. They're about him and what he's done. Before we start, let's pray. Jesus, Daddy, thank you that you're here. May the words of our mouth bless you and raise you up. Thank you that we get to come and sit on your lap today. Thank you for rubbing my back. That feels nice. Today we just want to sit with you and be with you. Thank you that you invited us. We love you. Amen. I want to start out with my favorite verse. I have friends, in fact, quite a few people that I know well, that say, start looking at Isaiah 49. A lot of friends that say, God kind of get the world in motion, but he's not really that concerned with every little single detail of your life. He doesn't really like to, he's too busy. He's got too much stuff going. Isaiah 49, it's one of my favorite verses. It's the one I always go back to. 49, and we'll start in verse 14. And I'm sure many of you know this. It's one that But Zion said, and when you see the word Zion, put your own name in there. But Joe said in this case, the Lord has forsaken me, and he's forgotten me. And there's been times, there's still days I think, Lord, where are you at? You forgot me. Verse 15, can a woman forget the suckling child that she should not have compassion on the son of her womb? And here he gets brutally honest. And he says, yes, they may forget. I've seen mothers abandon babies. Yes, they may forget, but I will not forget you. Verse 16, why? Behold. And that word, I have graven, and that word graven means carved. If you look it up, it means carved or cut. I have carved thee, your name. I have carved thee on the palms of my hands. It's not hard. It's really hard to forget someone when you've carved their names on your palms. And that's where our names are with Christ. They're right there. Every time he looks, there's our names. I just want to do a short introduction to who we are. A lot we're going to be talking about. We spent 3 years living in Guyana, South America, out in the rainforest. We have a billion stories of how God is amazing. So we're going to kind of start right before how we got to Guyana.
We had to hone them down. You don't want to be here for hours.
Yeah, it'll be hours and hours. So I'll start out with Guyana. We living in God's pocket, the abundance. So we had been married about 10 years or so, and we had been focused on all sorts of things. We'd been in the church, but our focus wasn't necessarily always on God. We went to camp meeting one year, and this was our car, and so we drove this to camp meeting. We're racing people on the way to camp meeting, and we won. But the good part is the people we were racing followed us into camp meeting to see our car, and we invited them in, so we thought, hey, we're doing missionary work, right? So anyway, at camp meeting, we heard a speaker get up. Some of you may know David Gates or heard his name, was Gospel Ministries International. Anyway, he spoke, and I don't know, has anyone been to the Auburn camp meeting? There's okay, lots of you, and you've seen there's 5,000 people that fit in that auditorium, and it was packed when he spoke. And the Spirit just moved. It was amazing, telling stories from the missions and the bush. And he was one of the ones that started on us that my God shall supply all your needs. And he's the one also that said he's either going to do it or he's a liar. And he's the one that found out first. And it inspired us. So at the end, he gave this impassioned plea. And this wasn't a, if you love Jesus, stand to your feet. This was a very specific one. He said, if you want to sell everything you own, sell it all, and move to missions, stand to your feet. And my wife and I, we were not about to get up. Oh, no. And we were actually sitting right next to the conference president and his wife. They were right here. And the whole auditorium, 5,000 people, went, whoosh, and they stood to their feet. And I kept sinking lower. I was red as a beet. I was embarrassed. And I looked at Melody, and we were shaking our heads like, no way. Did no one hear what he said? I ain't selling nothing. I ain't going anywhere. Anyway, 3 years later, we found out there was one other couple in that crowd that didn't stand. And we met them just returning from missions, too. So, a few weeks later, we had some friends that were in Grenada, and they emailed us and said, hey, Joe and Melody, we think you guys would be perfect for Guyana. David Gates needs some help down there. Why don't you go? And I emailed back and said, yeah, whatever. I'll email him and see if he needs money. So I emailed Gates, and I said, do you need money or people? And you know what I was hoping for? Yeah, we need money, and I would send him a check, and I would feel good about me, and he would feel good about him, and everything would be happy. And he wrote back and said,
my God owns a cattle on 1,000 hills. I need people. I need you.
So we had been trying to sell our house. We just had a little starter house there in Salton, Washington. Almost had it paid off, brand new home. And so it was in the middle of winter. We've been trying to sell it for a year. We wanted to get a bigger house out in the country.
Bigger, better.
Bigger and better. No one had even looked at the house, not in 1 year. And so as soon as I sent that email off to David Gates, I said, I tell you what, if our house sells in the next 2 weeks, we'll come. Whatever. Send. And as soon as I hit send, I picked up the phone and I called a real estate agent. You know, see that sign sitting out front? I said, just so you know, I'm taking the sign down, raise the price of the house $10,000 and take it off the MLS listing. And she says, what? You can't sell. I said, just do it. She goes, okay. So she raised the price $10,000, took down the MLS listing, which I don't know why, because it didn't do any good, and I took the sign down. And that was Sunday, I believe. I think it was Tuesday.
Pick a day.
I go and open the door. I'm like, hi. And there's a lady standing there. She goes, hi, I want to buy your house. And I said, but it's not for sale. And she says, you don't understand. I'm going to buy your house. And I said, well, I just raised the price $10,000. She says, I want to buy your house. Are you going to sell it or not? Well, we had both read what happened to Jonah.
Yes.
When he said he would and then decided
Seaweed
not to.
wrapped around the neck.
Seaweed and all those bad things. And so 3 months later, we're living in the bush.
Yeah. 2 years later, our money ran out. And it's interesting, as long as you have money in your pocket, you think it's going to be okay because they feel like parents. They're going to have more children. When those go away, you realize, okay, we don't have anything to make anything with. And we were in the bush, and we had reserved, because you always are told and conditioned that you need to have a little bit in the back pocket, okay, set aside for the emergencies, set aside for that. And so we had set aside for the emergency. We set aside an amount of money that would be just for 2 plane tickets to return home, for whatever reason. Our pilot, Gary Roberts, had gone off to get married in the States and had left us for 6 months. He said, you're going to need to make sure that you have enough food for 6 months. We were 200 miles into the rainforest, no running water, no electricity, a car battery with a solar panel, and a 2-way ham radio so that we could talk to people who were in Georgetown, but there is nobody in Georgetown. There's no way to get there except for aircraft. And Brazil border is 30 miles away, which they have a Brazilian highway, which is about this wide for 30 miles. There was one person who came over, and it took them 2 weeks. And they had had people thrown out, and we were treating them medically. So it wasn't exactly like there was a way you could get in and get out. So he said, make sure you have enough that I'll bring you all the food that you need, but I am going to be gone for 6 months. So grocery list was 100 pounds of rice, 100 pounds of beans, 50 gallons or so of oil. These are large quantities, and so it took all the money that we had. Well, there's a government school in the village, and about 200, give or take, students go to that school, and that's all they know. They get about a 6th grade education, and there's no further learning. There was an Adventist family that had come down, and they had started a mission school, and this is their opportunity to learn medical evangelism, to get further education, to hopefully improve what's already there, as well as their own lives. Well, we had 3 students who went to our church who had been coming faithfully in Pathfinders and doing Bible studies, and that we felt strongly impressed that we needed to send these students to school. When we talked to the people on the radio and asked them how much it was going to be to the amount that we had set aside. So we had to make a choice. Do you take what's in your back pocket and do you lay it out, or do you protect your own? It was a hard struggle, and we finally said, okay, we'll send them to school. Gary returned a few weeks later, just as the last flour, the last oil, the last beans, the last everything. It was the last meal. It was like the widow. We were having the last meal, and he came on the radio that next morning and said, I'm back in the country. I'll be out to stock you again. And we said, well, we don't have any money. And he said, don't worry about that. So he came, and he came with mail. He hadn't had mail for 6 months. Didn't know how the outside world was doing. And we received a letter, and inside the letter, there was from people we did not know, had never met, from a part of the country, and we've been to a lot of them, places in the country, from a place in the country that we had never been to. They said, we don't know you, but God impressed us that we needed to send this money. And the check was for the exact amount that we had sent these children to school.
That's right. We found over and over again that God provided always when we needed it, never before.
Never.
He never emailed us ahead of time and say, by the way, don't have faith because I've got you covered for the next few weeks. It was always this wait until the last minute. I think we got, actually, why don't you tell your stories next, because those are up.
How many of you filled a Christmas box for Samaritan's Purse? Anybody?
You know, those Christmas boxes, you fill up the shoe box, and then you send them off to Samaritan's Purse. Has anyone done those? Fill those up? Okay, we got a few.
We got a few.
Yeah.
And Samaritan's Purse, then maybe I'll need to tell what Samaritan's Purse is. An organization led by Billy Graham's son and grandson. I mean, it's a family thing. But they collect, they start advertising early, like September, about filling a shoebox for children who are less fortunate. And it's usually been, they're sending it to disaster areas. Haiti, lots of third world countries that otherwise wouldn't have Christmas. So we had done this for a number of years before we went down to Guyana, and in November we came to and went, oh, wouldn't that be super great if we could get Samaritan's Purse to deliver shoeboxes here? Because children there never experience Christmas, they don't exchange gifts. Their idea of Christmas is usually collecting in the village square and drinking a local drink, which is chewed up cassava that ferments and other things. Anyway, really yuck. And so most of the adults were drunk, and the children, sometimes, if they were old enough, usually engaged in that as well. So November, we went, oh, wouldn't that be great? And so we got people on the phone and emailing Samaritan's Purse, and they came back to us and said, you're already too late to put in your bid for this. And if you collect every name of every child that would want to receive one, then we'll think about it. We'll see if there are any leftovers.
But she also said, in the 10 years we've done it in Guyana, there's never been one single leftover.
Have you ever had leftovers? I mean, Christmas presents, leftovers? Not really. So we collected every name from the school. They had ledgers, and I worked at the health post, and so lots of books of everyone who would receive one. And we sent that away, and Christmas came and went, and we went, oh, that was too bad. Maybe this next year we can do that. And in February, we got a call that said, we're coming, and we're coming special delivery. And Christmas was February 7, and there were 273, the exact number that we asked for. So these are pictures of, they had to be ferried across, so he could only carry so many, and so he made several trips. And so these are children who are receiving Christmas that they'd never opened a gift before.
The little guy trying to get the sucker, his name is Orvin. The neat thing was about this is kids that had never seen any of this stuff or had gifts before, to see them sharing. Every single one of them made sure everybody had whatever they wanted. They all shared around. It was just amazing to see. So there's Gary, our pilot, got in on the fun. Last shoebox. And the only way, just so you know, to fit 273 shoe boxes in an airplane is Wendy, his co-pilot, had to take the seat out. She sat on the floor, and then they had to take the firewall off the tail section and shove them up inside the tail. I think it's all approved, though. After being there for a few years, Melody noticed that everyone downstream would get horribly sick. Lots of fecal oral stuff. Everyone washed, bathed, washed their clothes, and drank out of the same large creek. And so we knew, and the village had always known they needed a fresh water supply or a fresh source. There was no way to drill wells. So I went to the village elders and said, well, why can't we do a water line from somewhere? And they said, that's great. Where's the money? And I said, I don't know, but let's find a water source first. So took the GPS, found a water source, an incredibly crystal clear water source coming off of a 6,000 foot peak right behind us. We were the first white people to ever see these falls. They were kind of a special falls to the Amerindians. So they took us up and showed us that. So anyway, down at the base of this, we charted a course back to the village, and it was about a mile and a quarter back to the village, so we were going to need a lot of pipe. We spent 3, 4, almost 5 weeks with machetes and axes cutting a line through the rainforest so we could put a water line in. We actually started digging a hole for them, and the village says, well, Brother Joe, everyone was brother and sister there, Brother Joe, where's the money? And what did I say? My God shall supply all my needs. And I said, I have no idea, but I'm going to go find it. So we had all this stuff ready. We had the line cut, things were getting ready, they were digging the ditch, so I flew out, Gary came and got me, I flew out, and I knew there was one manufacturer of PVC pipe in Guyana. And we touched down, and I went straight there, and I asked for president. I want to talk to the president. Well, he's busy. Oh, he's not that busy. I need to talk to the president. So I got in to talk to the president, and I said, here's how much pipe we're going to need. It's going to need to be over a mile. We need all this and that and that. And he says, well, that's a lot of money. How much do you have? And I said, well, first I want to know what kind of discount can I get? And he says, well, how about 10%? And I said, oh, 30 is a lot better. Anyway, he gave me a 30% discount before I got out of there. And he says, when do I expect the money? And I said, I have no idea, but God's going to provide. And he says, you don't even have any money and you're asking me for a discount. And I said, oh, he's got the money. So as I'm walking out, I'm thinking, you know, I don't know if anybody knows about gravity-fed water systems, but I have my uncle who actually had some engineers work for him, and they won't touch it with a 10-foot pole. He says, there's too much to it. We don't even... So as I'm walking back, there was a homeless guy, and I've seen him a lot, and he would dig in the trash can behind the library, the town library in Georgetown, and he would get all their books they threw away, and then he would walk around trying to sell them. So he came up to me trying to sell me this book. And I was like, okay, let me look at your book. And right there it says, it was a book written in the 1940s, Gravity-Fed Water Systems and How to Design Them. It's the best 25 cents I ever spent. So I went back to the mission house and I started looking through this, and the phone rang. And it was my uncle, who I hadn't spoken to for probably about 7 years. And I said, how'd you get this number? And he goes, I don't know. You couldn't believe how hard it is. He says, hey, you got any projects I can fund? And I said, well, yes, I do. And he goes, well, how much? I said, it'll be about $10,000. He goes, okay, how do you want that? So he sent it down, wired it down, and a couple of days later, I had $10,000 to go pay for pipes. And you know, one of the neatest things about it is, my uncle owns a backhoe service, and that's what he does, is put pipes in the ground. So he said, hey, is there a way we can come down there and help you put that in? I said, oh, there is a way. You bet. Come on down. And so his family flew down. And we spent a very long time building a large dam. By the way, the dam we're standing on, you see those small rocks, anything larger, anything smaller than that all got washed out. So we built another dam with bigger rocks, and then spent the next, probably 4 months digging and putting in a water line. So it was the first time, a mile is a long ways to cut through the rainforest. All gravity fed. So it's the first time ever that they actually had clean running water in the village. Sorry, those naked Indian boys. So
Trying to keep it a family show.
Family show. So this was in a government clinic. When they'd built it about 20 years ago, they'd put a sink in, but of course they never had running water. So now they actually had running water and a sink. However, we eventually had to make a drain for it, which came in handy. So the biggest part, though, I missed this big part, and I was thinking about whether or not to tell it, but I have to tell it. So getting the pipe into the interior. I won't tell you a story about the British Special Forces who were there and how we almost got them dropped in by a C-130, but we couldn't get presidential permission because of international incidents with the neighboring country. So we wound up having to take them 100 miles into the interior by a truck. Now, I had a lorry driver. All of you from Britain will know a lorry is a dump truck. We have one person that went, I know what a lorry is. So I had a lorry driver in town. He was a Hindu man, East Indian. And I had talked to him a lot about my God, but he hadn't seen my God in action much. So I called him up one day and I said, we've got to get these pipes in the interior and 5 barrels of 55-gallon barrels full of avgas so we can fly them back and forth, because we can only get about 100 miles driving into the interior, then the next 100 miles is going to have to be hot flights with the airplane. So to get 20-foot sticks into a 185, you have to cut them in half and then still stick them up into the tail section and, of course, take out the seat. So we got into this dump truck, and he says, well, I'll take you to the interior. And I said, have you ever been in there? No, but, you know, it's a road. We can drive on it. I said, okay, do you know how to get there? No. He says, I'll find someone who does. And I said, do you know how much it costs? Because I've heard there's a ferry you have to take. And he goes, yeah, I've heard the ferry, some guys that drive vans, they pay $500 to take the ferry. I said, okay, so I'll cover all that cost, and we figured out a price. So we jumped in his dump truck, and his wife jumped in there too, and we were about 4,000 pounds overloaded with all the pipes and a bunch of other concrete and food. And so we started into the interior. And it was one wild ride. Everything was wet and clay, and he had a two-wheel drive dump truck. We saw lots of four-wheel drive dump trucks coming out, and no two-wheel drive ones coming out. So as we were going to the interior, we finally got it's about 80 miles in, and we came to the ferry. And as we got onto the ferry driver just kept staring at us, and then he would look under our truck, and he would look at us. And then he said, okay, where's my pay? And I looked up at the sign, and it said, small cars, $500, dump trucks, $5,000. And I pulled out of my wallet everything but one $500 bill, which in Guyanese is $5, and I handed all the rest of my money to him, the ferry driver, and I had already paid the lorry driver, and my lorry driver says, no, bro, Joe, you can't do that. You've got to live almost 2 weeks in this village in the interior, and it's going to cost you way more than that. That's $5. That won't even get you one meal. And I looked at him and I grinned. I said, but you don't know my God, remember? I've told you about him. He says, but how are you going to survive? You can't even, one meal, you're going to be there for at least 2 weeks. And I said, you watch. My God will supply my needs. You'll see. And I was thinking, Joe, you're an idiot. What are you doing? I need some money to live on. And so we got across, and the ferry driver said, just so you know, you're the last ones of the day. You barely made it on. I'm done for the day. In fact, he was putting up and going to get into his house. He said, you're the last ones for the day, so you're going to be stuck. There's no one else coming across. We're like, okay. And as we were leaving, he says, you know, I've never seen a two-wheel drive truck make it this far. He says, watch out for Jumbi Hill. And I knew Jumbi meant Devil Man, so Devil Man Hill. And I said, okay. And we take off, and we're going along, and all of a sudden, have you ever come up over a hill, like you're out in the bush, and all of a sudden you see just sky in the hood, but you don't see land anymore? Well, we went over the brink of a hill, and his wife put her feet on the dash and started screaming and calling out. They have a lot of gods, calling out on all of them. And we started shooting down that hill, and it's just clay slime. And every time he would touch the brakes, we'd start to get sideways. And so finally he just kicked it into neutral. And by the time we got down to the bottom, we were doing about 60. We shot up the other side, and by the time we just made it to the edge, we were in first gear, and he was going, whoa, 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 and we just made it over. And we were all just sweating like crazy, and I was praying the whole time because it was just crazy. And about 2 miles later, we came to Jumbi Hill. Jumbi Hill was the same, except almost twice as far down. And the frightening thing, after we were about halfway down, because again, he slammed on his brakes, but we slid over the brink, and we couldn't stop. And his wife turned whiter than I am, and she was a very dark East Indian woman, and she was screaming, and I was praying, and I would occasionally look over at him, and sometimes he was like this, and sometimes... As we got about halfway down, we could see that there was about 100-foot chasm that went straight down that was, maybe from me to the back of the church. And the bridge that was put across this chasm was 4 logs about this big around. And I knew, I'm starting to calculate, okay, if we're 4,000 pounds overloaded and it can haul 8,000 pounds and the truck weighs, we shot across those 4 slimy logs doing close to 50, almost 60 miles an hour, out of gear. You couldn't get it in gear. And as we were going across, I could feel we would drop down a few feet and lift up and drop down. Those little things were boom, boom. And we made it across, and about halfway up the other side, it got down to 3rd gear, 2nd gear, 1st gear, and then it died. And he hit the brakes, but we started sliding backwards now. And so he had to take it out of gear again, and we shot back across those 4 logs in reverse, going about 40 miles an hour. And we stopped on the other side, and we all got out, and we just laid right in the mud. We couldn't even, our knees were gone. And he was upset, and we were praying, and I'm like, what are we going to do? And he goes, we have to unload at least half the weight. So all we had, his tailgate was about this high. It was a big truck. So we put his tailgate down, and we unloaded. Each barrel of fuel weighs about, 300 pounds for a 55-gallon barrel, 6 pounds a gallon. So we unloaded all of those, and then we unloaded about 20 100-pound sacks of rice and flour and concrete. And then we got back in it, and this time with my wife and me pushing, his wife, yeah, not his wife, his wife. We just crested the top of the hill, and by now everyone's just spent. So at the top of the hill, we unload another about 6,000 pounds up there, And then we had to do it again. We shot all the way back down, sliding uncontrollably, shot across the logs again, and again we were kind of sideways, and I have no idea. It was just the Lord. So then we had to load all those back up into the back of the truck, and again we made it across. We made it to the top, and it would just chug over the top. And when we got to the top, we were so physically spent and tired, we stood there and we just stared at the barrels. And we tried to knock one over so we could roll it, and we couldn't even knock it over. We were done. And I went over to him, I put my arm on him, he's like, "Get off me." And I prayed, I said, "God, you know we can't. We're done. You're going to have to send help." And before I even said amen, because I don't even know if I had the power to say amen, we heard this, wah, this truck just driving like crazy. And we turned around, and this was a single track. There were no turnoffs. There was no nothing. We know it was one single track from that ferry. Up over the ridge comes this huge four-wheel drive Toyota truck just flying over the ridge. And there was about 6 guys in the back, and they almost got thrown out. They jumped over the ridge so high. They slammed on the brakes, stopped. Before we could even say anything, they all jumped out of the truck, took all of our stuff, and just threw it on. Threw it all on, threw the tailgate on, jumped in the truck, and took off. And he looks at me and he goes, "Your God does things." "Your God does things." And I said, "Yeah, he does. I told you he would provide." And he goes, "Honey, his God does things." And we get in the truck and we start driving on. A few more miles, we came to Madia. It was a village in the interior, a very rough town. It's a mining town. It's one that, very violent. So we pull in, and right as we're pulling into town, an East Indian man jumps out in front of the truck, the lorry, and is waving us down, "Stop, stop!" And we slide to a stop. And he says, "I've heard about you. You're the pipes man, aren't you?" And I said, I don't know what that is. What? He goes, "No, I heard on the ham radio that you're bringing pipes into that village, aren't you?" And I said, "Well, yeah. And he says, "I'm the shopkeeper. I have a shop here in town. Let me tell you something. You come by me, I have a shower. You can take showers." And I'm like, "Oh, showers." He says, "You come by and eat by me. Whatever you need, I've got." And I pulled out of my pocket that $5 bill, and I said, "I would like to, but this is the only money I have." And my driver went, "Yeah, that's all the money he's got." He gave it all away. And he says, No, I mean for free. You come by me, I will feed you everything I have. You come take a shower by me, you stay with me, whatever you need. You just come. And my driver looks at me and he goes, "He's East Indian. We don't give anything away. Your God does things." And I said, "That's right. My God does things." And he says, "That does it. Your God, your God does things. I don't get that." So we went by and unloaded, and a Rastafarian man came by and says, "Hey man, just so you know, man, they're going to come and slit your throat tonight. You will not have one single pipe left."
No pipes.
Because everyone in the interior, working diamonds, you want pipes. You want pipe to be able to divert water, to spray water. He says, "You will be dead and there will not be one single pipe left here. They'll be all gone." And my driver was hearing this and he goes, "Yeah, that's right." He says, "I've heard people get all the time here." And yeah. And I said, "But you know my God." And he goes, yeah, your God does things." So they dumped them all right there at the airstrip, and there was a little government bond. It was 10 by 10 room. So I swung my hammock in there, and that night, long story short, that night I was sitting in there, and I heard the pipes rustling around. I thought, "Oh no, someone's stealing pipes." And I was praying before I went to bed. I said, "Lord, those are your pipes out there. They're not mine. And if you want them, you're going to have to, they're yours. I don't know." So I got my flashlight out, and I shone them out there. And there were about 30 cows that came and laid down in a circle all around those pipes. And for 2 weeks, every night, those cows would come right as it started to get dark, and they would lay nose to tail all around my pipes, God's pipes. And when we got to Guyana, not one single pipe was left. The shopkeeper in Guyana said, "I've never heard of anything coming through there without either someone getting killed or people taking stuff." He says, "It's got to be your God." God is faithful, and he is just, and he is amazing. God does things. Do you guys know that? Our God does things, and he does it all the time. Let's see.
So these are our kids that we
Yeah, those are
sent
kids
to
we
school.
sent to school.
in their school uniforms.
one of David Gates's books, Julita, the one on the very left. That's Julita and Vernon and Damien. Julita on the left, if you ever read one of David Gates's book, his second one, it starts out with her story. Anyway, that's a wow story, but I'll let you read the book. That's Julita. That's me, about 70 pounds lighter. Yeah, there wasn't much to eat there. So after Guyana, we have a million other stories, but not a million more minutes, so we'll jump on. After Guyana, for medical reasons, we came back to the States. We got a job at Auburn Adventist Academy. I got a job there as assistant dean, and as assistant dean, I was pulling down $600 a month. Can you believe that? Woo! That's a lot! $600 a month from, well, just never knowing what was going to show up. So we got a job there, and we were so excited. The house they gave us, no dirt floors. So I'll have nice carpet on there. We were the only ones to live in the house. We were the only ones to live in the house? We said, well, how many other people live here? And they're like, no, it's just you. So we were pretty excited. And you know, the amazing thing is, off of $600 a month, we were able to save at the end of every month. We always saved. Why? Is it us? No. So one time we had a Bible study. We were having an ongoing Bible study in the house. And one of the ladies came and said, hey, I just met the lady at the gas station down there, and her granddaughter just died, and her little baby. And they don't have any money, no way to bury him. Let's take up a collection and go take it down there. And this is when Melody and I kind of started this thing, and I looked at her and I said, should we give $100? And you said,
no, we can't afford that.
We can't afford that. And then what did you say back?
Double it.
Yeah. Okay, we really can't afford that. Let's give $200 then, because we know we can't afford that. So all right, so we gave $200. Now, $600 a month, and we gave away $200 of that. And we thought, oh man, that hurts. That's sacrificial giving, right?
Where you think it's going to hurt.
Yeah, because sacrificial giving is where it's at. It's like a big sacrifice. The next day, I got out to get in my car, and I don't know if you've been around Auburn, but it's not the best neighborhood, and we've had lots of stuff stolen there. So every day you roll up windows on your car, lock the doors, because that's, stuff got stolen a lot. So I walked out to the car and I went to unlock the door, and there was a letter, an envelope laying in the seat. And the windows were closed, and I thought, I didn't put it there. All the doors were locked. I checked them. So I opened it up, and there was $200 cash sitting right there. Next day. I want you guys to know there is no such thing as sacrificial giving. It does not exist in God's house. God says, you want to try to outgive me? Whatever, you can't outgive me. Just know God is faithful in that. He's always faithful in that. You cannot outgive God. All right.
So after we had been at the academy, Joe had been the assistant dean for 5 years, and in that last year, he was teaching auto mechanics as a volunteer. And he discovered that was where his passion was, not only for young people at the high school level, but it mixed his hobby and children at the same time. And it was such a joy that he decided that he was going to go back to school. And the only place that had a program was in Ellensburg, Washington. This is in 2008. When it seems like I have a really good job, why would I want to leave a really good job and go back to school? And we struggled with that for a while of knowing Ellensburg is out in the desert. And since the pastor has been telling sermons about the Israelites and being led out to the desert, and now I kind of understand the idea of them saying, the flesh pots back there, why would we want to keep going forward where there isn't anything? Yet every indication was saying, Jesus kept saying, I want you to follow me. I want you to leave the nets, like he told the disciples. I want you to leave the nets and I want you to follow me. And I thought that, okay, he's going to go back to school and I'm just going to start working again. I'd been a nurse. I'd stopped working since we'd come back and taken care of those 2 babies. And I just thought this is where I needed to return to work. And I was sitting with the story of Jesus calling the disciples that day. I want you to leave the nets and follow me. Like audible voice. Okay. He had been also at the same time calling me in a different direction. I want you to create with me. I'm the artist of this universe. I created this world. I want you to now create with me. If the master artist of the universe is inviting you to collaborate and cooperate with him, how can you say no? And I said, okay, here's my fleece. If, I like my word, if you provide a studio, I will do the art with you if you provide me a studio. All right, I'm thinking, we're going with no money. Where are we gonna go? So it's 2 weeks before we need to move out of our apartment, and we need to move to Ellensburg, and we have no place to go. I went, grandiose idea, maybe we should go to church there and see if somebody knows something. We had already made a trip, driven around, nothing. We thought that we might have, even with some of our savings, been able to buy something, but there's nothing to buy that was in our price range. And so we went to church, and on the way out, there was a guy who was like, "You're moving here."
And I said, yeah, I think so.
He goes, "Okay, here's the number. I know a guy. Here's the number. Call this guy. He has what you need." Okay, so he called, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I have the house. Come on over." And I think I would have missed it, but they negotiated. He said, "Well, it's $1,100," and they negotiated to $800, but I was still standing there praying and going, "God, we can't even afford that. Where's that going to come from? We have no jobs. No looking of jobs," and he's already been very clear on leave the nets. Okay. So the property had a tack shed and a house on it, as well as a barn. It was 7 acres. And he began to tell us the story of how all this, that he had flipped the house. It had been an old army barracks, that he had gone in and changed all of that. And that there were 12 outbuildings all over the property, and that the only two standing were the ones that we saw. And this being Christmas time, you know what gift tags look like, right? And we opened the door of the studio, and that was covering one of the knotholes. And this always makes me cry. Mel is what my family, as I've been growing up, used to call me. This is yours. There's the studio right there. I don't know where we found things it just had lots of boards on the outside, but we had to refinish just the inside so that the wind wouldn't blow through. But he has over and over again reminded me that I love you. Here's my love gift to you. I'm very intentional. I'm very serious about the relationship I want with you. And I love lilacs, and I had never owned a house that had them, and there was a whole row of them on the north side of the house. Something that he knew that was in my heart that I'd never even asked for. But I was still crying and wondering, this is great, but where's it all going to come from? How are we going to let it go? I'm the provider, not you. And I always thought, okay, well, art is the way that I'm going to need to do that, and I'm going to need to hurry up. It's not something I've been trained at. I'm going to need to hurry up and learn it so that I can provide for the family. And he made that very clear in Nehemiah 9. Let's turn there. Nehemiah 9, verses 19 through 21. I was reading this and crying over the fact of, I don't know where the next, I don't know how how we're going to make it. And I read verse 19. Because of your great compassion, you did not abandon them in the desert. That's where I'm at, in the desert. By day, the pillar of cloud did not cease to guide them on their path, nor the pillar of fire by night to shine in the way they were to take. You gave them your spirit, your good spirit to instruct them. You did not withhold your manna from their mouths, and you gave them water for their thirst. For 40 years, this is the one I had posted on my desk every day. For 40 years, you sustained them in the desert, and they lacked what?
Nothing.
They lacked nothing. And then he also reminded me, you haven't seen the lilacs bloom yet. Okay then, I'm good till they bloom. He also reminded me of Habakkuk, chapter 3, verse 17 through 19. Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vine, there's olive crops fail, and the fields produce no food, though there are no sheep in the pen, no cattle in the stalls, no money in your pocket, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior, because the sovereign Lord is my strength, and he makes my feet like the feet of the deer. He enables me to go on the heights. He reminded me that I had an option while I'm in the desert. And the pastor had a sermon about that as well. You have an option when you're in the desert and you don't think that there's any way. You can either complain, which is really easy, or you can learn the discipline of rejoicing and saying, even though there's nothing and it doesn't appear that there is any way that you could do anything with this, that it seems impossible to me with the eyes that I see, I trust you. I trust you, Jesus. Praise and thanksgiving. Trust and thankfulness is the power. TNT is the short for dynamite, right? Trust and thankfulness is the power to destroy the voice of the enemy, says Psalms 8:2.
Yeah. The thing that I love about the verse, about 40 years he provided for them. What did they do to deserve that? What kind of work were they doing out in the wilderness? There's just sand. Nothing. They were sitting there every day saying, thank you. What else could they do? What were they doing to earn it? There was nothing you can do to earn God's salvation. Nothing you can do to earn his love or his providing. He provides because he's your daddy. He's your father. He's your lover. He provides just because he loves you. It's not because you deserve it or not because of anything you've done. He provides because he wants a relationship with you. One day I went to school. I had to get new books. And I went to the bookstore, and my science book that was required was $160. And I said, Lord, you know I can't afford that. So I walked out and went to class. And on the way home, it was a $160 book. So I was getting ready to go home for lunch, putting my helmet on my motorcycle, and I heard God speak. And anyone here heard God speak? His voice is so sweet. He said, go back to the book buyback. You can go and sell your books. And when the God of the universe speaks to you, what do you instantly do? You argue. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. I was putting my helmet on and I heard him speak. He said, go to the book buyback. It was just right there. It was like someone just right here standing. And I said, no, I'm hungry. I'm going home to get, why? Then I said, why? Okay. And he's like a parent that doesn't keep repeating themselves. They just say it once and stand there till you do it. Mm-hmm. Or not. So anyway, this time I said, okay, Lord. So I took my helmet off, and I walked back to the book buyback. And I'd been there before when there was like 300 people standing in line. I get there, and there's 3 people. And I walk up, and I'm like, "What, Lord? I'm here. This is dumb." So I walk up right behind the guy in front of me. He's wearing a backpack. And I'm standing there just staring at him. He turns around and he's staring at me. And I'm staring at him. And he's looking at me like, and I said, "Oh, you don't happen to have a science book you're selling back, do you? Because they were new just this last quarter." And he goes, "Yeah, I got one." And I said, "That's weird." And he goes, "Yeah, it's kind of weird." I said, "Oh, would you want to sell it to me?" And he goes, "Well, let me see how much they're going to give me first." And I said, "All right." So he walked up, and I walked up with him. I'm like, "Man, Lord, you know stuff." And he walks up, and they say, "Let's see, buy it back price, we'll give you $40. And I was thinking, it's going to cost me $160 there. And I said, I'll give you $50, $60. And he goes, "Okay, sounds good to me." The God of the universe, the God that keeps everything running, cared about a stupid science book. A little tiny science book that was going to cost me $160. He cares about that stuff. When people say, "Oh, he doesn't care about their little details in life, don't bother," he does, because he wants relationship. And I argued with the commander of the angels. The commander of the angel armies, I argued with him. Scholarship.
So Joe thought, since he had time on his hands, that he could write for scholarships. We'd also made a pact on whatever we got, we would pay increase on, even if that wasn't necessarily monetary, which is even a little bit harder. We were following Jesus. I discovered, okay, you can do that in the mission field, and you hear stories of that, and people are like, "Oh, I could never do that." We want the miracle, but sometimes we don't want to be in the place of where the miracle happens, which is usually an uncomfortable place. And so we were saying, okay, if he's going to provide, and we're going to pay tithe on all of that. So he got a scholarship, and on Sabbath we came home from church, and we're opening a letter. And the first letter says, "Congratulations, Joe McWilliam. You are now the proud owner of a $2,000 scholarship." Woohoo!
And then I went,
Uh-oh.
I've got to come up with $200 tithe. There's no way.
The next letter he opens, he says, our friends were just here last week. Keith Waldy. "Dear Joe, I'm sitting here, it's Friday morning, and I heard Jesus just say, write Joe a check for $200. So I have no idea why I'm writing this to you, but Jesus knows. Love, Keith." Then Joe, liquid thanksgiving running down his face, says, "And somebody just gave me $20. He paid, so he not only had the $200 tithe to pay for the $2,000 now, he had the $20 to pay for the $200. He even provided the tithe to pay, that would be a gift back to himself."
Isn't he faithful? Oh. So probably a month or two after this, I wanted that I'm somewhat handy with vehicles, and I saw a great deal.
Great deal.
Guys, you know about great deals. It's a great deal on a Toyota Corolla, and all it needed was a fuel pump. Sweet, I can do that. So I called the guy up. "Yep, come down and pick it up. You're going to have to put it on a trailer." "All right." So I got the truck and trailer out. I pulled them out, got it running. "Hey, kids, wife, come on, let's go. We got a great deal." And they all ran out and said, "Go get in the truck. It's running. We got to get it quick, though, because someone else is going to get it." So we'll go hop in the truck. As I'm shutting the door on an empty house, I still remember looking at the couch on the way out, and I heard the Lord say, that same sweet voice, "Don't get it." And when you hear the voice of God Almighty, what do you always immediately do? I said, "No, God, I got this one. It's a good deal." And I slammed the door and I went and got in the truck. And as I'm driving away, I said, "Lord, was that really you?" And I knew good and well it was. And then as I'm driving further, I thought, no, it's still a good deal. It's still a good deal. Because even if there's other stuff, I went and bought it. $400. Oh man, that's a great deal. So I bought it. So I'm driving home, and we're driving by a junkyard, and I see they have another one in the junkyard. Looks just like it. I'm like, Providence, right? So I stop and go in the junkyard, and it's got brand new tires. It's got all kinds of great things. Man, look at all the parts I can get out there. How much do you want? Oh, only $300. What another great deal! Now I've got 2 great deals in one day. The Lord knew I was digging myself a pit, so I bought both of them. I drug them both home. It needed a lot of things. Fuel pump wasn't one of them. It was just fine. I actually could have gotten rid of that car much sooner, but I left both of those cars sit right out front. And I would say to Joseph and Kate, see that car out there? That's what happens when you disobey. Bad things happen. When you guys disobey, you might get a spanking, but that's Dad's spanking right out there. I heard God speak. I heard, don't get that. Don't get it. I went and got it. So God lets us disobey. We can do things that, oh man, we can make big mistakes. And God still says, I love you, but there's going to be consequences. And there were. That was the worst deal I'd ever done in my life. And basically in the end, they both just went back to the junkyard for free. And they sat out there as a reminder for a year and a half. That's what happens when you disobey. Just things happen.
So another good deal.
Yeah. So another good deal, and this one the Lord did say was a good deal. I bought a Honda Civic for really cheap, put a few dollars into it and drove it. Also in town there was a Nissan Sentra that I bought it and fixed it up. Put a little bit more than I'd planned into it, but we had a buyer lined up. And that Sabbath, there in Ellensburg, they had a guy come and he was talking about getting 3 ABN for the valley. And Melody and I just felt impressed. Man, we got to give to this. And I told Melody, I said, tell you what, we're going to make about $1,000 on this car. How about we give 500 of it? And what did she say?
We can't afford that.
We can't afford that. And then we both just grinned and said, let's give 1,000 because we really can't afford that. And so we pledged $1,000 and we gave that. And we thought, man, that's sacrificial giving right there. We're something. The next Monday, I'm driving that old, ugly 89 Honda Civic into a parking lot, and the guy backs right into me. Anyway, 2 days after giving our big sacrificial giving, our $1,000, we got a check from insurance for that old junky car that still ran fine for $2,600. He tripled our money back. You can't outgive God. God cannot be outgiven. He's going to be faithful every time. I've tested him in a lot of things, but God only gives you permission to test him in one thing. He says, in money, I'm going to be faithful. Now, there's some lessons I've learned that were hard. I've made some big mistakes. You know, the size of the lesson always usually had the amount that was in my pocket at the moment. Is what I want you guys to take away from this. Is we're coming down what I believe, and I hope you do too. This is the end of time. It's here. It is now. And I've had all kinds of friends. In fact, some friends from the missions even call me up, man, Joe, you've got to start saving up. At least have 100 pounds of rice, 6 months of food, have it packed in a car. You got to get ready, got to prep up. Have some friends that are good preppers. Here's the fact of the matter is, my God, who I hope is yours, says, I will supply all of your needs according to my riches and glory. And he's either truthful or he's a liar, but he can't be both.
And it can't be just...
There's nothing you can save up. There's nothing that you can pack away. There's no cabin you can have deep enough in the woods that's going to be safe. The only safe place. And he doesn't say it's running to the mountains. He says, I am the mountain. Just know it's not going to be you saving your own skin. It's not you and your planning. It's only Christ. Christ is the only one. Just like, who's the guy? Right before the Sodom and Gomorrah, Lot. There you go, Lot. The angels came, right? And they said, let's go. And did he leave immediately? What did he do? Argued with them first. But then what did he do after he argued with them? He said, I got family. Let me go get them out. Let me bring them out. Just so you know, when the end of time comes, it's here. It's not about running to the hills.
There's work to do.
There's work to do. Run to your friends and your family and say, come on, come with me, come out. He saved 2 of his daughters, right? Otherwise they wouldn't have come. The end of time isn't about saving up, prepping up, running to the hills, stockpiling guns or food or whatever it is. It's about stockpiling Christ. It's about having a relationship with the guy who's just been chasing you for your whole life, saying, I just want to be with you. Please stop running from me. I just want to provide you. Please let me provide for you. That's our God. He is mighty to save.
Amen.
Don't lay up for yourselves treasures here.
Please.
Moth is going to corrupt it. Dust, rust. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven. It's the only place that's safe. All right, shall we bow for prayer? Jesus, thanks for being with us. It's good to see you again, too. Do you mind if we go in and talk with Daddy? Thanks. Wow, it's always bright in here. Do you mind if we crawl up? Oh, thanks. It's great to sit up on your lap. Hey, I brought some friends with me. More than usual, yeah. That's the cool part. We can all fit up here. Everyone crawl on up. John, even you can come up too. You don't even have to hold still. Come sit right on up. And the best spot, guys snuggle right in. You just lean right against his chest. Oh, we just love to be here. Daddy, you know we got all these requests, but it seems like every time I'm sitting here leaning up against you and you're just rubbing my back and you're just hugging us all up, all the requests just seem to go away. I can't think of a single thing I need because you provided it all. It's just such an awesome privilege to be here. Man, Daddy, we love you. Thanks for loving us that way too. I know there's more waiting. I know you got plenty of time, but we got to go. We'll see you again here in a few minutes. I love you too. Thanks for letting us come. Jesus, good to see you again too. Remember those scars? Yeah, you know what I remember. My grandma's got that vitamin E. We can rub those in. I know, but you're kind of proud of those, aren't you? Thanks for those scars. Thanks for the hug. Yeah, you do give the best hugs. We love you. Come and get us food. Thank you. Amen.